Welcome to our webinar today, How to Ask For and Get What You Want, by Tara Fletcher of Fletcher Consulting. My name is Ryan Kauf and I will be your host today. I direct the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, at UW Green Bay. The Wisconsin SBDC is a statewide network of resources working with small business owners and their executives to facilitate their business's growth and improvement and to help launch successful new companies. The no-cost business counseling and low-cost leadership development training at the Wisconsin SBDC at UW Green Bay is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration, also known as the SBA. Our website is uwgb.edu/SBDC. We call these monthly no-cost 30-minute webinars our Secrets to Success series, designed to help small business owners and their executive team members increase their financial success. At the conclusion of this webinar, we will share the upcoming webinar topics, and we encourage you to consider registering for those. We thank Mickey and Tim from First Business Bank and Michael Wentworth of TMR Associates for their partnership in developing and promoting these monthly webinars and for their dedication to small business success. There's Michael Wentworth there. After the webinar, you will be emailed a link to a recording of this webinar. During the webinar, you're invited to ask questions at any time. Please use the menu along the right side of your screen indicated here in the red circle. Type your question and hit enter. As soon as I see it, I will make note of it for the presenter to address toward the end of the webinar. And now I'd like to turn it over to our expert presenter this month, Tara Fletcher of Fletcher Consulting. Tara?
Thanks, Ryan. I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for the introduction. So this is our subject for today, how to get what you want, the four-part formula. What we're really talking about today is assertive communication and the styles in which we speak to one another. Here's our discussion roadmap, the topics that we're going to cover today. We're going to start by discussing the communication styles, what they are, and we're also going to define them for you. We need to be able to make sure that we're understanding what the communication styles are, the definition of the words that we're going to use, so that we can hold that thought in our mind long enough to continue our conversation and discuss what they mean for us. One of the great ways that we're going to be able to define the communication styles is also by giving examples of what they look and sound like. We're going to cover some do's and don'ts. What are our tendencies in our communication? If we tend to be passive, we'll talk about what we can do and what we shouldn't do in order to be more assertive. And same thing for people who tend to be a little bit more aggressive in their communication style. We'll cover do's and don'ts for that. We're also going to discuss the four-part assertion message. This right here is the best part. You're going to enjoy this. This is the secret formula for how to get what you want at work. We're going to use this especially in really difficult times of communication when we want somebody to change a behavior. One of the most difficult things to ask for. We'll show you how to do that today, right here on your lunch break. So thanks for joining us. Come on for a ride. All right, so here are three primary communication styles. The assertive communication style is a style in which individuals clearly state their opinions and feelings. They firmly advocate for their rights and needs without violating the rights of others. Passive communication is a style in which individuals have developed a pattern of avoiding expressing their opinions or feelings, protecting their rights, and identifying and meeting their needs. This is why this is so important. Somebody who's overly passive might not even be asking for the things that they need. Passive communication is usually born of low self-esteem. These are individuals who don't feel that their needs are worth meeting. Aggressive communicators. In that style, individuals express their feelings and opinions and advocate for their needs in a way that violates the rights of others. This form of communication is also born of low self-esteem. It's often caused by past physical or emotional abuse, unhealed emotional wounds, and feeling of powerlessness. We have the note there that says combinations. Perhaps we've heard the expression someone is passive-aggressive, but what does that really mean? Someone who is passive-aggressive in that style, they appear to be passive on the surface, but really they're acting out their anger, in a subtle, indirect, or behind-the-scenes way. They might be smiling on the outside and appearing to be cooperative while sabotaging or quietly disrupting a project behind the scenes because they're not capable of dealing directly with the object of their resentment or with the problem itself. So those are the three primary communication styles. And this visual kind of gives us an idea of what that looks like. We want to be sure to remember that assertiveness is not aggressiveness. Someone who is aggressive is only concerned about their needs. Someone who is passive is only concerned about the needs of others. The assertiveness is usually the best communication style. Of course, there are times where being passive or aggressive may be completely appropriate. But what do these different styles look and sound like? That's what we're going to talk about next. So while we look at this brief graphic of the communication styles, assertive, aggressive, passive, and passive-aggressive, we'll give you a basic message of the primary three. The way that somebody stands, their posture, the way they carry their body, as well as their voice, their intonation, the way that they express it, are going to be different for each of these types as well. The basic message of an assertive style is, this is what I think. This is what I feel. This is how I see the situation. A passive individual might take a hunched over stance. Their shoulders might be forward, their head might be bowed, their voice might be soft. The basic message that they're conveying behind the words, my feelings don't matter. Only yours do. My thoughts aren't important. Yours are the only ones worth listening to, and nothing. You are superior. The aggressive style, on the other hand, the personal posture, the poise, the way in which they carry themselves might be foreboding. The voice that they use might be loud. This is what I think. You're stupid for behaving differently. This is what I want. What you want, not important. This is how I feel. Your feelings don't matter. You can go ahead, Ryan. Okay, so I'm not going to read this complete list to you here, but there are some other tendencies with the three primary types of communication here. Someone who's too passive might be overly kind. They might be sucking up their emotions, holding them in. They have low self-esteem. And then on the other hand, on the aggressor, we said that also stems oftentimes from low self-esteem, but that is manifested in a different way. It often manifests itself as a low consideration of others and a feeling of self-importance, that arrogance or that explosive behavior or threatening might come out. Whereas the assertive, right in the middle where we want to be, we're going to talk about some of those examples and the words that we should use and how we use them that will help us get what we want, whether it's at work or also in our personal lives, using clear messages, being firm, using I statements. And someone who is assertive, whether they really feel that way inside or not, they want to present themselves as being very self-confident and self-aware. So we're going to look at these things throughout our conversation today. Look for these words. So the do's and don'ts of a passive and aggressive style. Okay. For assertive speech, in order to communicate assertively, we'll want to use I statements. I think, I feel, I see, I want, I need. State only the facts. Be direct and honest and straightforward. And then again, that four-part assertion message, somebody who is assertive uses that four-part assertion message, that's a tongue twister, four-part assertion message to get what they want, especially when it comes to changing someone's behavior. All right, if we tend to be passive, these are tendencies that we might have. These are don'ts. If you tend to be a passive, I want you to think about how often you apologize. We might often start our conversation with, may I interject this? I'm sorry, it's probably a stupid idea, but could we maybe, but if we need to eliminate those from our vocabulary, especially in a professional situation. If you're speaking up in a meeting, don't apologize, don't downplay, don't over-justify. Just say what you have to say. An aggressive person, here are some tendencies that they might have, and in order to be more assertive, here are some don'ts. We don't want to use you statements. You statements are often given in conjunction with definitives, which definitives are not true. If we say you always, you never, that can't be the case. Is something really a disaster? Is it the worst thing that's ever happened? Those overstatements put other people down and don't further the conversation. Remember, we don't want to win the battle. We want to be able to make progress, to move forward, to come to some sort of agreement. Someone who's overly aggressive might have a tendency to speak as if other opinions are stupid or bad, or be overly opinionated in themselves and what they have to say. Okay, so this part, if you get nothing else out of the conversation today, the 4-part assertion message, I promise you, it works. It works in business, it works in your personal life, and it's a secret to getting what you want. So let's get into the fun stuff. Okay, we mentioned that the 4-part assertion message is especially helpful when we want to request a change in someone else's behavior. It helps us to resolve conflict. So let's find out how we can do that today. When should we use it? So an assertion message can be helpful if someone else's behavior is doing one of these things. It's time for confrontation if someone else's behavior is interfering with our work. Is someone else consuming your time? If someone is harming your person or possessions, absolutely is it time for a confrontation. And that assertion message is the best way to go about it. If someone else is causing us extra work, costing us money, businesses exist to make money. If we are not achieving our objective as a business, a confrontation needs to take place. If someone else's behavior is negatively impacting the client's perception of your company, that's also costing your business. Losing money, causing you extra work, those are times that we need to speak up. Here are the 4 parts, the basic parts of an assertion message. When I do this presentation in a workshop, we like to take the time to go through this together to really make sure that it gets ingrained in your memory. Because if you remember even the 4 keywords here, it'll help you to apply it in situations where you really need to. So the 4 parts of the assertion message are behavior description, feeling message, consequence statement, and a request statement. So that's behavior, feeling, consequence, request. If you're sitting at your lunch break at work, go ahead and say it along with me if your door is closed. Behavior, feeling, consequence, request. I can't hear you, but I'll pretend that I can. Let's do it again. Behavior, feeling, consequence, request. One more time because we really want to remember this. Behavior, feeling, consequence, request. Great. Thanks for your participation if you joined in with that. Let's see what this means. All right, here's an example of a 4-part assertion message. Tom, twice this week you left the supply cabinet unlocked. That's the behavior description. I am very anxious about this situation. Feeling message. Because supplies are missing that our department will be responsible for. Consequence statement. I need you to be responsible to lock the cabinet when you are finished, or you will no longer be able to use my keys. Request statement. All right, so let's look at this again. So we're starting with a behavior. It's clearly stating a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not a feeling. It's not you always or you never. It's a clear, direct behavior description. Tom, twice this week you left the supply cabinet unlocked. Next is our feeling. I feel very anxious. The consequence, supplies are missing that our department is responsible for. And what are you requesting? I need you to be responsible. Or You'll no longer be able to use my keys. So let's go through this again without the interruption. Tom, twice this week you left the supply cabinet unlocked. I am very anxious about this situation because supplies are missing that our department will be responsible for. I need you to be responsible to lock the cabinet when you are finished, or you will no longer be able to use my keys. We also want to keep in mind our body positioning, our tone of voice when we're delivering this message too. Questions? Do we have any questions, Ryan?
We do. When it comes to the three different communication styles relating to assertiveness, passive, aggressive, and passive-aggressive, how does the four-part assertion message kind of get through to those different communication styles?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. Keep writing in your questions too, folks, while you have them on that right-hand side there, and we'll try to get to them. So how does this four-part message reach people with different communication styles? What I find really interesting here is that if you have a passive individual and an aggressive individual in the same workplace relationship, let's say, someone who is passive, they're only concerned about another person's needs. Someone who is aggressive is only concerned about their own needs. Therefore, if you continue in the same pattern of communication, the passive person continues passive, the aggressive person continues aggressive, they will only continue to feed those needs and to further polarize. However, if you are able to use an assertive communication style, if you're able to use that four-part assertion message, you're going to disarm the other individual. They won't be expecting that kind of response from you, and you'll find either end, either a passive individual or an aggressive individual, that you'll be able to make progress rather than pushing each other further, even enabling someone to be more passive or more aggressive. So thank you for that question. Great question.
Another question I have is, let's see, when talking about consequence, and it's department-based or it's, personal, like the example here, are there any other ways to state that consequence statement?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And you know what? I just put up on my website some examples of how to write these four-part assertion messages. They're on my website, taraelfletcher.com. And I don't know that we have much time to get into specific examples here in this brief webinar, but that would be a great place to look to practice this. That was a question last time we had this webinar too, I think was at practice. So I added that to the website just for that reason, because sometimes if we take the time to look at other examples, it makes that communication easier for us. Oh, and thanks for putting that back up on the screen there, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which, and I guess also, do you tend to see that consequences are more relatable, or when they're work-based or department-based, I suppose, versus personal? Does that matter?
That's a good question. And the consequence, I do have additional notes on that there too. But the consequences are going to depend on the situation that they're in. Here, I'm just pulling out an example here. So I have an example of somebody who is concerned about a coworker. So let's just look at this example briefly. Do we have a few minutes? Let's see. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So it says you're concerned about a coworker at the company where you're employed. Let's pretend you've become really good friends. You've worked together for several years. But then lately you've noticed that your friend comes to work depressed. You think it's because they were just denied a recent promotion. You expressed concern about your friend's behavior, and they blew up. They yelled at you, they told you to mind your own business, slammed down their coffee cup, walked away, but you think this person really needs your friendship right now and they're just upset. So if we're going to write a four-part assertion message for this, we're going to start with the behavior. Perhaps we'd say something like, Ryan, it seems like you haven't been yourself lately, and I was wondering what I could do to help. Feeling, I was hurt that you raised your voice earlier. It made me question our friendship. Consequence could be something like, I wonder if we can still spend time together socially. Request could be, I'd like you to consider going out to lunch with me tomorrow. I think it would be good to get out of the office for a little while. So that's more of a social situation with somebody that we work with. So that consequence, you know, in this case it was, I wonder if we can still spend time together socially. The consequence in the example that we used here with Tom was regarding the department. So if that was just another example of what a consequence might look like, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I hope that helps. And like I said, I do have more examples on my website.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
No, thanks, Tara. And then one more question is, this obviously takes practice. What are some good ways to kind of keep this in front of you so that you have the 4 parts there? I'm thinking about, do I carry a little cheat sheet with me, or a Post-it note, or a 3x5 card, or something like that? What have you seen that has worked?
Okay, thank you. That's a great segue into this question too. And it's true. We communicate in the way that we communicate because of the way that we were raised, because of perhaps our genetic makeup, because these are so ingrained in us, these tendencies are so ingrained in us, it takes a long time. So I always encourage people to start small, allow for errors, and even let people know that you're working on being more assertive, and people will be supportive of that. I also like to recommend to people that try writing down these 4-part messages. Try writing it down. Think about a situation, make one up, or use the examples that I have on the website, and write them down and see what you can come up with, see what you can put together. And just kind of, once you do it a few times, you'll start to get in a habit. We need awareness of our communication style, and then we need patience with ourselves, and then we need to practice it in order to make this a part of our life and the way that we communicate. I also want to let people know, especially if they have a tendency to be more passive, that doesn't mean that you have to speak up all the time. If you're with a group of friends and they want to decide where to go for dinner or what movie to watch, and you really don't care, you can just sit quietly. You don't have to be assertive all the time. But when it comes to these work settings, I think it's really important that we try to have the best relationships that we can, and that we're asking for what we need and what we want.
Thank you so much, Tara.
Yeah. Sure. I was going to say, carry a cheat sheet. I like that idea too. But if you can just remember behavior, feeling, consequence, request, I hope that helps.
Great. Thank you. I have the slide up with the resources on your website if you want to talk about those.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I briefly mentioned that TaraFletcher.com. I always put handouts on there after I do a presentation or a workshop, so you can find information there. And from TaraFletcher.com, there's a drop-down that says handouts, but the latest post on that website should be about this webinar. So if you go there, I will have links to the resources I used to put this information together. Any of the images that you saw will be on there for you as well. Sometimes the images help us remember and ingrain in our minds a little bit better than just the words. And then a couple other good websites where I found information, embracethefuture.org. Oh, that's okay. And then successdynamics.org and Serenity Online Therapy. Those were all some interesting places that talk about assertiveness. And then I do have another website, FletcherConsulting.com is my primary website, and I'm on social media, so feel free to contact me that way too. Just about any social network, I'm on it.
Thank you, Tara. Again, thank you for taking the time to teach us something really valuable that we can use right now, and very much appreciate you giving us this information today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you taking time out of your day to listen to our webinar.
Thank you. Next month, our webinar will feature Ken Ivey, who is known as the Web Czar. His company is Living Water Digital, and he'll present how to turn your 5-star reputation into a standalone marketing machine. In August, Cher Gunderson of Master Your Accent will present how to break through public speaking blocks and get out of your own way. You can register for these and all upcoming webinars at uwgb.edu/SBDC. We also have several past webinar recordings there on sales, marketing, and leadership. And with that, I'd like to thank Tara Fletcher of Fletcher Consulting, First Business Bank, and Michael Wentworth of TMR Associates. And I thank you all for attending. Now, go and ask for and get what you want. Bye-bye.